Hey there, SkyDK here, along with 3 of my 4 horsemen. I don't know where the 4th one is. It's probably taking a lunch break. Anyways, today we're going to be talking about how to do the Kruul tanking challenge mode. I'm going over this in 3 parts. I'm going to be talking about gear, talents, and then different tips and tricks and ways to handle mechanics. Hey everyone, SkyDK here, and we're going to be talking about gear for the Mage Tower Challenge for Blood DKs. Or, well, the only thing here specific for Blood DKs is Legendaries, so aside from that section, I'd say that this can kind of be taken for any tanks. Anyways, first thing I want to talk about is trinkets. So, for trinkets, there's a bit of versatility actually. There's a lot of different types of trinkets that you can use for this encounter that would be effective. The trinket combinations I use personally is Terrorbound Nexus for its massive amount of AoE damage, and Chrono Shard because this is probably just the best trinket you can get for a Blood DK. Seriously, anyone who doesn't have a Chrono Shard, if you have it and you're not using it, you must have like a really good reason for it. Or you really need to understand how great this trinket is for Blood DKs. But yeah, it might just be an item level thing or whatever. But anyways, there's some other honorable mentions of trinkets that you should go for. One of which drops from one of my favorite dungeons. When I say favorite, I mean this is on par with Halls of Valor, is Blackrock Hold. That's Ember of Nullification. I haven't had any experience using this trinket, but I've heard a lot of people on Reddit talk about how amazing it is when it procs, silencing the arcane ads, silencing the Inquisitor in Phase 1. It's just, it consistently reduces damage, and Phase 1 you are taking a constant amount of damage. Phase 1 will test like your AoE damage and how well you can sustain as a tank. So like things that increase your sustain survivability are really good for surviving Phase 2, and things that do AoE damage are really good for Phase 1. Both these are for Phase 1. Phase 2 mostly tests your single target damage and your burst survivability. So if you're struggling more on Phase 2 or you're dying more on Phase 2, like you die, not Corvus. Corvus is gonna die. Freaking asshole. But then you'd want to worry more about burst survivability. So if you're worried about burst survivability, then one good trinket is from Nighthold, is Gul'dan. Gul'dan's Infernal Contract. This can help you survive or at least give you another out for Annihilates. But also from Nighthold, Fang of Tichondrius. I'd say it's okay. I personally don't use this trinket and probably never will, but I've heard people saying good things about it and its ability to like let you survive and kind of give yourself a bit of breathing room whenever you use it. So there's that. Anyways, there's other trinkets that are okay, but I'd say mainly you probably want to focus on AoE. Even though I'd say the most important type of damage you can do is single target, the amount of benefit you get from single target trinkets just isn't that much right now. If you have a really good single target trinket, like high damaging, that will be really good for Phase 2. Phase 1 is just so much cleaner if you have a good AoE trinket. Terrorbound Nexus was just a godsend. I had to give a shout out to Ali-san, my friend, who he passed me over this trinket. Shit's really good. Saved me in that challenge. For Legendaries, there's a lot of Legendaries. I'll try to be quick. Predaz, keeping in mind the shield's going to be nerfed, and Predaz is really good for Phase 1, and the shield's going to be nerfed in Phase 1. Therefore, it's kind of like it's drained on value, because it gives you this consistent survivability, which is good for Phase 1. Skullflower is amazing for this fight. You're going to be blood boiling a lot, but not death striking as much for how much AoE you're going to have to like deal with. So it's going to give you a lot more bang for your buck on death strikes, and that's really important in this fight. Ocarus Drapes, you can easily use AMS without any stacks of decay, so you can get a good use out of AMS. This will help smooth things out or kind of like give you some breathing room in Phase 1, but it's not too useful in Phase 2. It has its uses, just not as useful. Mostly if you're just kind of struggling with getting out of the fire, since it's such a massive slow, this can kind of heal you while you're getting out of it. That's about it. Shackles, I would say, isn't too great on this fight since you're not death striking as much. Its value drops because it gets more value the more you death strike. And since you're death striking less, the value of this is dropping down. And it has mastery, which is you. I don't have too much experience with this legendary. It doesn't seem that great. It has 3 sockets, which is really nice, but at the same time, the healing on it, it's like 1 extra Blood Plague, which is not that much healing. Service of Gorfiend. Interesting thing about this is that I surprisingly really would not recommend this legendary. In Phase 2, if you're running Service of Gorfiend, you're probably doing it because you want to get an extra Vamp Bloods. However, I can Vamp Blood every other Annihilate, and this legendary did not change that. So that's why I don't use it. Not much to say here. It's a little bit of extra survivability. I wouldn't really use this legendary, but if you have it, cool. It helps in Phase 1, not much in Phase 2. Except with one talent we use, it's arguably good, but I'd still say no. Agrimars, I had a really good movement speed setup. I had Cephas, I had the Bear Tartar consumable food, and I had a Chrono Shard, so movement speed wasn't a problem, so I didn't run Agrimars. But if movement speed is a problem, Agrimars is a legit option for you to take. Lenithal Lament, good legendary. Gives you damage. It's not hindered at all. Overall nice. Gives you a crap ton of haste and verse, so really good. Archaon's Hatred Reborn. Easy to use this without getting crapped on by Decay. And it gives you good damage, gives you good survivability, breathing room in Phase 1, burst survivability in Phase 2. Nice trinket. Cephas, you have it, use it. I don't care what other legendaries you have. If you have Cephas, this is single-handedly, for surviving and dealing damage, the best legendary you could probably run for this fight. You can CC at all times, during every phase. I would recommend it highly. And then, so that's legendaries, that's trinkets. For item level, try to be like somewhere between 890 and 900. I did this at 905. I'd say it's probably possible around 880, but for people who say that this is really just a gear check, like, yes and no. You need some gear to actually be able to do this, like a minimum requirement, but if you have Heroic Tomb of Sargeras, it's not going to save you. Like, most of your deaths in this, most of my deaths in this challenge mode are getting knocked off, and no amount of gear can save you from that, so yeah, don't rely on Tomb of Sargeras gear to get you through this. Anyways, thanks for listening to this part. Hope you enjoy the next. Hey there, back for part 2. And in part 2, I'm going to be talking about the talents. I don't want to spend too much time here, mainly because there's a lot of talents that are clearly good and clearly bad, and I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about why a lot of these talents are probably not good. A lot of times it just has to do with numbers. So, let's just go into it. Blood Drinker, best thing you can possibly use. And one of the good uses for it is whenever you're in Phase 1, not on the Inquisitor, like you're dropping your Decay stacks, use Blood Drinker during that time so you have, like, still damage going out on him, even though you are not, like, actively hitting him. It's a great way to kind of, like, speed up Phase 1. If you feel like you're not making the best use out of Blood Drinker, and when I say that, I just mean you're not using it, like, you find yourself in the situation where you probably use it once every 2 minutes, then in that case maybe you want to use Heartbreaker, which is still good because you're probably consistently hitting 5 targets. Really nice. Now, for the second tree, Spectral Deflection is what I used, and it gave me a lot of breathing room in Phase 1 and 2. It is a great talent, and it lets you do a lot of good stuff with Annihilate. And it just allows you to play greedy in Phase 1 also. Rapid Decomp, if you feel good about your mitigation, you feel good about your gear and everything, Rapid Decomp, a lot of extra AoE damage, can't go wrong. Ossuary, good damage, good survivability. Overall, this is what I take. Not Blood Tap. Anti-Magic Barrier could potentially give you an extra button to use for Annihilates, but it shouldn't be necessary. But if it is, take it. Red Thirst. Broken talent. The only broken thing Blood DKs have. Just click Red Thirst. Never click away from it. Not for the Kruul challenge. Not for anything else. Never go away from this. Tremble Before Me. Very, very strong. I would say the things in here would be Tremble Before Me and Tightening Grasp. Tightening Grasp, if you feel like you need to kite the arcane ads, I've heard some people talking about that. I found it not necessary, but if you do find yourself needing to kite, Tightening Grasp is great. Otherwise, Tremble Before Me can interrupt Inquisitor, which is really great. It's just extra survivability over time. It can interrupt arcane ads. This is actually the only way that you could interrupt Kruul. Interrupting Kruul isn't like too substantial because he usually just starts casting right away. Unless you interrupt like Twisting Reflection twice, then for some reason he forgets about it. But otherwise, Tremble Before Me is just really great. It just overall works well with this encounter with how many things could just be affected by it. Foul Bulwark, extra breathing room. That's all I can really say about it. If you feel comfortable with your health pool, I don't, but if you do, you can take Rune Tap, and it helps with Annihilates in Phase 2. Will of Necropolis could also help in Phase 2 if you're comfortable with your health pool. I just like Foul Bulwark better. Extra breathing room. I can't switch away from that. The only time I ever really picked Rune Tap was for fights like Cenarius, Odin, and solo tanking Heroic Gul'dan. Then this tap tree, don't take Purgatory, no healer's there to save you. Valen's not a healer, he's just fucking, he lied when he queued as a healer. Just know that. Blood Mirror, extra button to use during Annihilate, highly recommend. But if you're being overwhelmed by ads in Phase 1, Bone Storm is really good to take, and it'd help you deal with those ads. So, extra AoE Bone Storm, help deal with Kruul, Blood Mirror. I actually, fun fact, did not need Blood Mirror for Kruul. I accidentally fat-fingered IBF and ended up not using it at an important time in Phase 2, so when I used Blood Mirror for the third Annihilate, I could have just used IBF, and it would have been fine. Or IBF being Icebound Fortitude. So, that's, I guess, just a fun fact to note, is I didn't need Blood Mirror. I could have taken Bone Storm and made the fight easier. But, up to you. These talents can change based off your playstyle. I just kind of wanted to establish what would and would not be viable talents. If I didn't mention the talent, it's not viable, and you shouldn't take it because there's not a good reason for it. Like March of the Dam, there's the difference between 3 and 6 second Wraith Walk isn't going to change anything, and there's nothing extra you can break out of it by taking the talent. Stuff like that. Bloodworms is just a tuning, it's a number thing. That's really it. Anyways, get this is some extra feedback on talents to help you with your Kruul task ahead. Hey there. Scaredy back here for part 3 of how to deal with mechanics. So, I've got a couple note cards out here to organize all of my thoughts because there's a decent chunk of things to do. So, for Phase 1, main thing is there's Inquisitor. Once Inquisitor dies, Phase 1's over. Most of you already knew that. So, Decay drops your max health by 8% per stack. So, main thing with Decay is that you're probably going to want to dip away from Decay at around 4 to 6 stacks. Just depending on how comfortable you're feeling. Another way that I also kind of help deal with Inquisitor is, as you know at the beginning of the video, I grip him using Death Grip, then Gorfine's Grasp, into this corner, like where is Rubble, and that just helps me with other mechanics later on in the fight. But at the same time, when I do that, there's 2 things to note. Is 1, I'm just very greedy with my stacks, and 2, you might know, I'm pretty sure it happens in the video, is that I sometimes looks like I don't get a first stack, and then after I use Gorfine, I get 3 immediately. I don't know if that's a bug, tooltip, UI error, or whatnot, but just kind of note that might happen. And if it does, just kind of have to deal with it. Since it's the opener, that's when things are most common, it's easiest to deal with. Mind Rend deals about 2 to 3 million damage each cast. You can asphyxiate the Mind Rend sometimes for some more breathing room. I do that in my opener, which is what allows me to be greedy. If you do asphyxiate it, try to asphyxiate him towards the end of the cast so he wastes his time casting, and then he's stunned for 5 seconds, then has to do an entirely new cast. Basically gives you enough time to drop off your stacks. PvP mechanics. Then there is Drain Life, Drain Soul, Drain something. It heals him. You gotta interrupt it. That's That's not too much. Don't worry about it. If he uses it for a second or two, it's not the end of the world. You noticed I let it go off for a second or two, while I try not to get knocked off. Then Arcane Ads. So one nice thing is you aggro one, you aggro them all. I've seen a couple of exceptions, inconsistencies with this. I just mark it down as bad RNG when it happens. But yeah, if you aggro one and they don't all aggro, it's bad RNG. Try to save it. If you can't, oh well. But yeah. And the corner you're tanking them in is actually a corner where one of them spawns, so it works out really, really well. There's a debuff they apply to you when they auto-attack. I've been searching through the damages that you take throughout the encounter, and the damage that's amplified through the debuff seems to only come from their auto-attacks. Like, it's not Mind Rend, it's not the Arcane Netherstorm thing, so their auto-attacks just amplify their auto-attacks. It appears. If that's not the case, then there's a tooltip error, and Blizzard needs to fix that. There's Arcane Storm, Netherstorm, I forgot what it's called, but yeah, don't stand in this. It will kill you, it will kill Valen, it will kill Corvus, it will kill Corvus's cow. Shame on Corvus, his whole family. I hate Corvus. Most of you probably hate Corvus if you've gotten into Phase 2 enough. But yeah, just kind of keep away from it. Also, keep them away from Valen, because Valen's the only person who can really die in Phase 1 out of those two people, so it's pretty easy to keep those Arcane Ads away from him as long as you get aggro on all of them. Anyways, there's now also the Infernals. The Infernals are that big of a deal in Phase 1 for two reasons. One is you're sitting in that corner, so it's harder for them to knock you back. And two, if you try not to aggro the Infernals, they'll aggro on the Valen, and they'll start wailing on him. They will not kill him. Valen can tank those Infernals, and he will do a crap ton of damage hitting those Infernals too. And on top of that, just note that you can't kill those Infernals. They have more health than the Inquisitor and Kruul combined. The only way they really die is that they deal fire damage at the expense of 5% of their max health. That's how they'll die. So don't bother trying to kill them. I tried doing that once I realized their health. However, their Slam, if it does knock you off, you can come prepared. Every 3 minutes, you can use a Goblin Glider. I would highly recommend bringing these two into the encounter. You see me using them in the video. A lot of other kill videos involve using Goblin Gliders because everyone makes a mistake. It's nice to have your bailout. Thanks can have them, so can I. Then there's Valen. He spawns orbs. These orbs will despawn after a certain amount of time, so don't feel bad about using them early on. Just try to go into Phase 2 with 2 or 3 orbs. A lot of people say 3 to 4, but honestly, since they despawn and they continue to spawn, don't be too nitpicky about how many you have, especially since they're more important later on in the phase. They're probably more important for other classes that can't self-heal, because since Blood DKs can self-heal, we basically just need them towards the end of Phase 2. Yeah, so feel free to pop those early. Oh yeah, and there's also the eyes. The eyes aren't a huge deal. Just make sure to face them, and whenever you're dropping decay stacks, you can go ahead and kill them. I'd recommend keeping Death... I usually keep Death and Decay up on the boss, but you can Death and Decay to kill the eyes, you can Blood Boil them. I, a lot of times, just find myself spamming Death Caress on them. But yeah, just whatever works well for you. I just like Blood Boil and Death Caress. Bone Storm also works if you take that as a talent. Then there's Phase 2. Phase 2, there is Kruul. They messed up the names here. The Kruul one is frickin' Corvus. Hate Corvus, we all do. But Kruul has 4 abilities, 2 of which are big ones you need to worry about. First one is Annihilate. And Annihilate puts a debuff on you that makes you take 130% increased damage from Annihilate. So, as it goes on, you're going to need to mitigate more and more. Because of my gear, I did not mitigate the first 2 Annihilates. Or I don't have to, at least. The second Annihilate is going to nearly kill me if I don't mitigate it, but I don't have to. In my kill video, I only pop Blood Mirror for the 3rd Annihilate, and I use Shadow Melt for the 4th one. So Blood Mirror, only Blood Mirror alone, with being item level 905, almost killed me. So keep that in mind for yourselves. Potentially, you might want to just use Icebound Fortitude. That would probably be enough at other item levels. And on top of that, if you're able to use Vamp Blood and have something else for the second Annihilate, because the second Annihilate might kill you if you're not high enough item level without any mitigation. But yeah, so I'd recommend nothing for the first, maybe something for the second Annihilate, and like IBF and maybe Vamp Blood for the third, and try not to get to the fourth. I got to the fourth and I Shadow Melded and made Corvus take the hit. If you are not a Night Elf, I've heard it's also possible to just try to run away from Kruul, possibly just using Wraithwalk or something like that, and then he will end up annihilating Corvus instead. I haven't tested this, I probably won't, so it's up to y'all if you want to try that out. So then there is also Twisting Reflection. It's a heal thing. If he gets the cast off and you don't interrupt it, just wipe. You're not going to beat it. Don't waste your time. It's not worth it. If he gets Twisting Reflection off, he's just going to heal way too much. Then there's Leap. His Leap that drops fire on the ground. The fire puts a big slow on you and does a lot of damage. Just get out of it. It's not too big of a deal. It's mostly just really annoying and causes you to mess up other mechanics. That being said, do watch out. If he leaps near Valen, it's not going to hurt Valen, and the fire won't hurt Valen, but I did notice Valen does move if he's in that fire. So keeping in mind he sits perfectly still, but his positioning will change if that fire is near him. So then the other thing is that you might want to keep to the side for the fire, but it's kind of okay to be in the center towards the end of the fight when things get hectic and you want to be near your orbs. But, you know, you'll probably figure out how to manage that fire on your own, like, as you do the encounter. Just keeping in mind, you probably want to keep them off to the side. Not the edge, just off to the side. But then at the end, like, you are going to ignore that mechanic for the most part and just try to stay close to your orbs. You'll kind of notice how I do that in the video. But, yeah. Then there is these purple lines. I just ignored them. Honestly, when I tried to handle those purple lines, I messed up more mechanics and I died more than if I just ignored them, so I did. They were just annoying and I left it at that. Infernals in this phase are now more impactful than since you're not sitting in a corner. You just got to keep moving except when you're baiting. So that's all I'll really say for Infernals. You just got to keep moving and try to dodge them. You can just sidestep them. But when I say baiting, the reason why is because the arcane adds will kill Corvus a lot. And the way I handle this is I try to sit still, have the arcane adds wailing on me, and then when they start casting Netherstorm, I move. And this is the easiest way to make it to where Corvus doesn't die to them. He might still die to them. He could run into the adds. But this makes it substantially less likely that that will happen. So try to bait the arcane adds into casting Netherstorm and then move. But if you put a marker on Corvus, a lot easier to keep track of him. Yada, yada, yada. But anyways, for your allies, I have on my note cards allies written in air quotes. You have Valen, who honestly isn't that big of a deal for this phase. He gives you the orbs, and those are really nice. You're going to pop those orbs rapidly towards the end, trying to avoid a fourth Annihilate, trying to avoid the adds casting their Storm near Corvus or Valen. Like, those orbs are... You're just going to frantically pop them every time something's about to happen towards the end, just trying to squeeze in that extra bit of time to kill Kruul. Corvus, on the other hand, he's just worthless. Just flat up worthless. Put a marker on him. I found the orange marker was the easiest to keep track of him. Whichever marker you find is the easiest to keep track of him. And you can use him to take an Annihilate. Annihilate only chunks him for half his health, so it's nice. But otherwise, like I said before, with how to handle the arcane adds, that's the best way to keep Corvus from dying, that I found out. A lot of the stuff can be inconsistent at times. This is the most consistent way I've had of handling the fight. Other people might have found better ways, but this worked for me. Yeah, I would say this fight's particularly punishing for tanks. Decay sucks for blood decays. There's RNG involved, but yeah, this strategy, if you have a decent item level, like at least like 890 to 900, and you follow this, you will eventually get the kill. Anyways, good luck on your Kruul attempts, and I hope to see the rest of you with your artifact weapon. Although I probably won't see you in dungeons, and I might see one of you at a time in raids. But I do see you. Hope you have that weapon. Looks pretty nice, and it feels good to have.